Today's podcast guest is a technologist, winemaker, speaker on the topics of AI and machine learning, someone deeply passionate about technology, and co-founder and CTO of several companies, currently building BuyerMind. We discuss a range of topics from how to make content and email marketing work for your business, even if your niche isn't sexy, to building great products, as well as future of software development in the AI-driven world. Welcome to this episode of Unwrapped Tech Leadership Journeys. Some parts of this episode do get technical, so if you wish to skip to a specific topic of interest, you can do so easily in the chapters on YouTube, Spotify, or most other apps where you might be listening to this. Please enjoy this conversation with Konrad and Bujak, a Baldur Connect podcast. Okay, so we're live. Konrad, thank you so much for taking the time and really nice to see you again.
Thanks, Alex, for this opportunity. Great talking to you too.
So maybe just to give our audience a bit of a background, a bit of an introduction about yourself and about this episode, what it's going to be about. I think today is going to be very interesting for a lot of companies who are trying to reach more customers, who are trying to educate their customers. Just to be upfront as well, we don't have any affiliation. You didn't pay us for this promotion, so it's not here to have some kind of paid promotion for your product, but basically it's going to be around email marketing and kind of educating customers through that particular channel.
Yes.
A lot of integration as well with AI and a lot of cool insights that hopefully you'll share over the next 5 years. What do you see happening? But yeah, looking forward to this. And before we start, do you mind to maybe give us a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and maybe a bit of a summary of your career so far?
Sure. So I've been working with IT for more than 12 years, though I've been programming for around 15 years. Most of my career, I would say right now 50-50, I was both a developer, product manager, and people leader. I've worked with both corporates, though I found my true self with startups, scale-ups, and right now, as Alex you've mentioned, I'm building BuyerMind with few of my friends. Well, we are 12 right now, so it's a bigger group.
And you're the CTO, so I'm looking forward to get into some of the technical stuff as well.
Sure. I always happy to share the technology.
Yeah, and last time we spoke, I kind of got a pretty good insight how deep you are in that community and with hackathons and kind of setting up communities of other developers. So definitely looking forward to get into this. Maybe just to give a bit of my background on this point of view. So I've tried a lot of tools for email outreach. Some people say email is dead. For me, I personally found it's still one of the best sources of getting new customers, reaching new people. But as you know better than I do, in Europe especially, we're quite limited with all the GDPR rules and stuff like that. So could you maybe give us a bit of an overview of BuyerMind and what you guys are do? Maybe how you stand apart from other products? Because I've used most of the ones that are popular. I've used Instantly Reply, Holo. All of them have their pros and cons. But then you still often get a reply saying, don't email me or remove my email from your list. So maybe we can discuss that a little bit later. But if you can just give us a bit of an overview of BuyerMind.
Yeah, so we started as generally with just email marketing. Then we also moved to doing it multimodal. So we also have email. And email is just an opening door to actually go to a website or landing page where people can find more information. So in our case, goal of the emails is to be curious, is to be riveting. So something fresh, something different. So it's not like another cold email. Hello, this is my product and I am amazing. I am the first ever company doing this.
Basically trying to sleep on the first date.
Yes. And even some emails were going into the direction of being personalized, being relevant, but honestly, it's a tough one. Like I've seen some emails being too personalized and getting kind of cringy. And what we do, we actually try to move people between something called 5 awareness stages. So whenever someone doesn't know your brand, doesn't know anything about what you are doing, like maybe some of the listeners in here, we are in the unaware stage. So we are unaware of the product, we are unaware of the problem we are solving. Then we are in the problem-aware stage, where someone is known or does know, is aware of problem existing. Like we are aware right now of the problem that email marketing has its problems due to ChatGPT. I've been saying more and more pretty badly targeted emails but ChatGPT gave like big or a small entry actually to everyone who wants to send emails. Previously, like I was super scared to start conversation. Now this technology can replace this for me. Is it good? I wouldn't say so, because getting the right answer from AI is quite hard. And then after we are aware of the possible solution, like in this case, artificial intelligence, we are getting to being solution aware. From solution aware, you can be strictly aware of a specific product, like buyer mind, and you are becoming product aware. And this is a sweet spot, because suddenly when you send someone emails like, hey, I'm from buyer mind, and they know our brand, then you get it thinking, okay, I know these guys. Let's see what they have. And in the last stage, you are the most aware person. So you know what offers do we have, hopefully after the end of the podcast. But the idea is that when you are most aware, when you just need to buy something that this company is specialized in, you know who to contact. So aside of just giving our clients the conversion, we are also building their brand awareness. And we are still working through how to give $1 for this, but it's easy to give $1 for a conversion. It's harder to measure how brand awareness impacts.
And I think I figured out how you guys named your company, because by doing what you're doing, you always want to be on the top of buyer's mind, right?
Yes. The 17 is like, because our domain is BM17, we just did 17 to have a short domain.
Yeah, I got it. And I think I forget what that effect is called, but it used to take, I think, 4 to 6 interactions from a brand before you recognize it, and it's kind of familiar to you. And I think with short attention spans with TikTok and all of these short form content platforms, it's increased, I think, to more than 10. And last statistics I saw, it takes 18 to 20 touch points with a company before they actually recognize who you are.
Yeah, so I guess we need to send more and more emails.
So I'll be maybe a little bit, let's say, selfish in that respect. I'll ask you maybe some questions that I've struggled with, because I think a lot of people sending emails will relate to this. So I've tried a lot of these platforms. They have AI tools as well, but it's very basic. It's just going to take the person's LinkedIn information and say, hey, I saw you change positions recently. Congrats, buy my stuff. Yeah. Or, hey, I saw you guys increase headcount, blah, 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 buy my stuff. So still not to the point where it's smooth and it feels like a natural conversation. And then on the other hand as well, by sending more emails, we often think that we're going to get more people replying, which could be true. I've done 10,000 emails plus per month across different businesses, and it's not always the best thing that works. So could you maybe give us an idea of how do you guys overcome this with your customers, and maybe some of the best practices to follow from your point of view?
So the best practice, starting from the end, is to iterate. So we send smaller batches if we are in so uncertain territory. Then we start with like 100 emails, 200 emails, and we modify. So with each iteration, we are enriching the data with Google Trends, keywords, and other optimization mechanisms that we have, segmentation. We are better segmenting the customers. And as if we have even like 2, 3 opens, click-through rates, because in the emails, as I mentioned, we are aiming to go to the landing page. Usually we have around 8-10% click-through rate with 60, even 60 open rate of the emails.
And I think in the industry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of the standard is about 2 to 3% a conversion rate, right? Or a click-through rate. And I think if you have 30% open rates, that's quite good, right? So 8 to 10% click-through rate and 60% open rate, that's like incredible.
Yes, thank you. And it's a hard work, and it was so many the iteration of how those emails should be, and we are still experimenting. We are doing a lot of experimentation, like for some brands, for example, longer emails are better. If your topic is more technological, I don't really like reading short emails about technology, because it's not even curious yet. And I've been seeing like on the same side, like emails which are few pages. And there are some industries where you need to have just a short message. And some industries don't like pictures. So we are right now in many of the campaigns, we are not using pictures. Yeah, this poses a problem for, tracking opens, how many times someone opens the email. We are playing around with some tricks with that. But generally, it's important to learn from your campaign. So start with smaller batches and learn who was opening your emails. Because now you can go to their websites, you can check them link on LinkedIn, see what keywords they are trending on, and send a next campaign even better, more targeted into your niche.
And when we spoke, you gave me quite a few insights into maybe things that I thought I'm not supposed to do or things I am supposed to do in cold email outreach that maybe were wrong. So one of my worries was, of course, pictures. The other one was about sending links. So could you maybe, I don't know, give us a couple of things that are kind of the do's and don'ts when you send mass email campaigns?
So first of all, do your research when you are sending emails and make sure that whatever you are proposing is reasonable. I've been seeing multiple emails where people contact me and ask me if I needing some AI consultancy. And usually I'm replying to them with my link to my Stripe account so that they can pay me for the time they just wasted. Yeah, no one paid for me for that yet. Having fun aside, there is no magic bullet here because it all narrows down to who is your target group. And this is what we are doing with BuyerMind. Like before we start sending campaigns, we are doing a lot. If it's the first campaign ever for this customer, we are doing something called like onboarding. So we are going through their target groups. We are learning more about the target groups, learning about the pains, trending keywords for those groups. And we are checking the competition of the customer. And doing your research helps you getting more results, getting better results, because most of the people are just saying, hey, write me an email to product managers from Central Europe, or write me email targeting all CTOs and technology directors. These emails will be very poor. It's hard to target such a wide group with something that's relevant to us.
Maybe if we take like let's say an actual example, and you can give us more insights, because I know you guys don't just connect ChatGPT to email integration. There's a lot of enrichment. There's many, many data sources that you guys integrate. So, you know, if you're kind of in an industry and you got a sexy startup is some kind of new SaaS tool that helps you save X amount of hours per week or increase productivity, that's not necessarily difficult to sell. You know, that's something people actually want. But let's say one of the clients we work with, they're an insurance company in Germany, and they've been around for like 45 years. And, you know, insurance is not something people think about on a daily basis. It's something a very long kind of a prospect, I guess. But they have tens and tens of thousands of customers. It's emails that they've obtained legally that, you know, users either inputted for a quotation or whatever that is. So let's say you get a list of 100,000 customers in Germany who are potentially interested in buying insurance products. What would that look like in terms of you guys onboarding? What are the different data sources you connect, and what's kind of happening behind the scenes?
So we are experimenting right now because you are meaning B2C clients.
Correct, yeah.
In most cases, first of all, because of personal data, we are trying to focus on B2B customers. And it's easier to find information about those customers, because one of the stages we would do for this 100,000 emails is to segment them based on who those people are, who those companies there are, and narrow down those smaller segments as different target groups. And very often in the first iteration, we might, hard to say for 100,000, but it could be around 100. Let's say it's 100 target groups.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it could be more. We usually would start with a wider group. So we would split like technical, non-technical people, or company owners, non-company owners, and then try to narrow down within those niche the benefits each of those groups would have from having this insurance. So we are trying to focus on how the proposal of our client is different. And this is also what we would do in here. We would look for things that are unusual in the offering of this company, something that makes them different, and emphasize that. Insurtech
Could I give
is
you
a
more
hard
context
business
as well? Maybe it's going to help you as well. So let's say instead of going B2C, they decided to try something new and target B2B, where the whole company would sign up to their insurance products for all of their employees, let's say, yeah? And let's say the main advantage of the main value proposition of this company is that basically, if they don't help you save X amount of money on your current insurance plan, they give you a full refund for the consultation or whatever that is. So let's say that's a value proposition. They can find much better deals for the same insurance offerings?
Very often with similar situation, while doing research, we found out that most of competition does the same. So buyer mind is also interesting thing for companies to find out how unusual is their offering, because very often as we start researching it, as our systems go through the various data sources, we are pulling the data about the competition. And very often, the uniqueness suddenly goes past. Though we would focus on how this could value the target groups. In this case, usually it's probably HR people. I guess we would be testing also. In some of the cases, our clients don't really know who their target groups is, and this is where we also try to help them by targeting a few groups at the same time, smaller batches, and then we focus on the main group first to get the conversion. However, in this case, let's say I'm not really good in insurance, but because I'm also getting like paid insurance by from a bigger packages, we would focus on being authentic, probably, so that this offering is authentic, that we believe that our insurance policy, as talking like a client, we believe that our insurance policy is so good that we can give you even a refund. And we would target a strategy for a few emails, like a campaigns, that would teach people on why choosing insurance policy is important, why some policies are having problems with getting paid, why some policies like ours, which are for the whole company teams, are better. And we would go into specifics like of this offer. So step by step, growing the awareness of the offer, of the problem we are solving, because we are solving the problem that people are uncertain, most probably, that people are certain if buying this policy wouldn't make some problems in the future, or if it's even like how to say it, maybe not secure, but honest.
Right. I see. Everything is transparent. There's no catch.
Transparent, thank you.
Right. So I guess the first step, as you mentioned, segmenting into a lot of different potential audience groups, and then doing small tests that normally as an email guy, I would do this manually, right? I would just do some guesswork. Hey, this guy is the owner of this group is, I don't know, in the automotive industry. These guys are in this other industry. So it wouldn't really give me, it's a lot of A/B testing if you're doing all of this manually. It's a lot of splitting audiences in Excel sheets, feeding into the system. So I guess step one, you guys automate this. Step two, you actually find kind of the pain points and make the customer feel authentic. You're resolving that problem. And then from there, let's say, what happens behind the scenes? How do you enrich your emails? How do you generate content? Because you guys are not just cold emails. It's a lot of other stuff that you guys have in your platform, right?
Yes. So the thing is that we are focusing on the content. So our customers, we get to the ins and outs of their websites. We are processing any materials they are giving us, videos, maybe podcasts about their products. And then there's like our knowledge base about the specific customer. Plus we have our own knowledge bases. We have our experience from the industries. We have the data from Google Maps. We have the data from SEO. We have the data from general search engines and other trends, keywords, optimization, ads costs, and generally the data from the financial market, what growing right now, the trends. And we are using this data with our multi-agent system. So it's not just one agent like it used to be ChatGPT or other mobile apps. It's quite a few tens of agents working towards resolving this issue from start to an end. Because our system is also self-evaluating, making the groundness. So groundness is to make sure we are grounded within the relevant information. So it's facts checking for whatever was written in the emails. Giving you some insights in the emails is also getting you curious. There's like growth by 30% in a market that I'm interested in. Okay, let's learn a little bit more about it, where the data comes from. Then while having this big pile of data, we are able to use it for different approaches for email campaigns to move you through awareness stages, for landing pages where you actually can learn more. Like we are working on something called infinity scroll from TikTok or Facebook, where actually the content is adapting as you scroll through it. And it also changes the modality. And yesterday I was on an actually interesting meetup where we were talking about accessibility for products and websites. And I was like, oh, actually, I haven't thought that, but our product solves the accessibility issue. But first of all, we don't collect which modality you are using because we don't really mind it. Like, we are going to give all the options to do voice to voice, virtual avatars. Hopefully, virtual avatars could show and not only talk. We could do chats. And you don't have suddenly an issue of screen readers and stuff. You just need to go to a voice-to-voice, for example, interface for blind people. And this is something amazing, like how this technology changes how we even interact with the information. You don't need to scroll through the page. You can just directly ask the questions you want to ask and don't waste our time on the website. And it also gives more insights to the website
The
owner,
stuff that you want to know
creator.
as well.
Yeah.
So what you're telling us basically is that when is getting to the point that when somebody visits a website and they're interested in that product, they want to buy, let's say, this insurance policy, you're getting to the point where you can auto-generate all of the content on that page almost in real time as they're reading it. On top of this, you can also serve it in their preferred method of getting that information, whether it's audio, whether it's text, probably very soon video explainers. We're seeing a lot of AI, like faceless AI channels and stuff like that. So that's quite interesting because we saw a couple of years ago, Netflix was kind of trying to do this with some of their shows, that they would pre-record certain videos, and depending on which path you choose, you get a different version of the episode playing, right? And that's something me and you also discussed previously, that there's different tools that you can get custom AI avatars. You can even get an avatar of Konrad from BuyerMind, the CTO himself, explaining to you how to use this tool that's custom generated on demand instantly, right? So what are maybe some interesting trends you're seeing in the space with this kind of stuff, dynamic pages and different methods to deliver this information?
Most of the things that I'm saying is, super hard tech, but I'm seeing this trend that we want to get those answers faster and faster. What's great for me, because one thing that stops us as BuyerMind from delivering those interactive websites is time. So those avatars, usually if we go for the streaming avatars, you need to wait even like 2 to 10 seconds to even the avatar starts talking. Not to mention like the voice, if you use 11 labs for the voice, you have additional latency because we were using HeyGen for the avatars. But there are already some shortcuts, like we can pre-record previously like 100 short explainer videos and just route you through the paths and through the things that we have already there. And for other stuff, unfortunately, there would be a different way of accessing it, like voice to voice or chat or traditional website, because right now the system still needs to learn from itself. So you would start still with a standard entry point of the information. And I'm seeing the trend that we are moving through, or we are going into the direction of hyper-personalization, aside of building big, huge, large language models. We are seeing small language models which people could run on their MacBooks, on their iPhones even, or their Android devices right now. Now I'm seeing that this hyper-personalization, where people have their own agent, their own trained agent, is going to be a significant part of our future. Something like probably the sci-fi movies from like a few years back. I'm still waiting, for the Jetsons. I'm not sure if you've watched this TV series.
Of course, yes.
Yes, those flying cars and this android robots.
What's the limiting factor right now from your point of view? Because obviously technology improved a lot just in the last year, in the last 2 years. Is it still the compute? Is it just the development of these tools? What do you think is kind of the limiting factor from having it, let's say us having to pre-record 100 videos to show to different customers depending on their intent, to actually this being done like nearly instantly, where it's hyper-personalized and it's smooth, and how far away are we from that, and maybe what's the limiting factor at the moment?
Right now, I think we are very close to our top potential that we can have with materials we have on Earth. Another significant change will be with quantum computing, because quantum data gives us option to store even like 8 times more information on the same piece of a bit. Of like a one piece of computer information, we can store 8 times more. But I think it's electricity that's stopping us. I really see how we can parallelize all the computing, so we can compute pieces of information on thousands of GPUs. This is how people train their large language models. For example, Llama 2 models, so 3 editions, because now we have 3.2. The 2 version, as far as I know, it was trained on over 2,000 GPU cards. 2,000 GPU cards. I have just 1 card in my computer. Give me 2, please. And the limit is obviously electricity. We could connect probably 100,000 cards, but someone needs to power them. Someone needs to store them somewhere. And I think this will be one of our limitations. Not going into politics, whether we should go into atomic plants or not. But
that was crossing my mind.
Definitely we need to look through more performant ways of getting the energy, not from coal, as we are in Central Europe, but some more modern ways. Maybe solar plants will get a new life soon with their technology.
Yeah, it would be great if US, China, Russia, and all of these other countries combined use it for nuclear power plants instead of keeping us on the edge of our seats if we're going to get World War III or not, right? One question that I'm not sure how much you've kind of looked into this, but I follow a lot of stuff also in the decentralized space, blockchain space. There's a couple of interesting startups I'm following as well. That basically they're building decentralized infrastructure, and one of them is for specifically people that want to use AI. It's almost like the torrents version in the 90s, but they're doing the same with it when it comes to compute. So I guess if you want to train your own language model, I guess the users are getting some kind of a reward by providing their compute. And then in exchange, if you want to buy that service, first of all, you don't have a central point of failure. You don't have, like you said, one particular data storage facility in one place, but everything is kind of spread out. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's something viable? Do you think that's one potential solution to this going forward?
So I've been actually working with one of those companies.
Okay, interesting.
Called Golem Network. And there are a lot of problems with this approach when we talk about decentralization. Definitely then you need to go into a lot of redundancy, as you mentioned. But we are talking here about thousands of GPUs. So it's not that problematic. But if we would be training something on like 5 different computers, it's getting a problem, because if you lose 2 of those computers, now you need to load balance the traffic that we're calculating. You need to calculate again wherever those computers were there. And there are also approaches like with the training of large language models where you actually go through one GPU to another. So you just route the GPUs in the calculation, not necessarily do the calculation at the same time for one iteration, but not just go through all the GPUs in the circles, and you do like 9,000, 10,000, couple 100,000 of circles. Having this, in the chain, suddenly one GPU going down could be problematic, and it is a challenge. But there are technologies like Kubernetes that actually drastically improve this developer experience or engineer experience. But we usually call those people AI engineers, not necessarily the developers. So I would say the technology is great because it gives us way, way better pricing. Common GPUs on AWS or for regular people are very, very expensive. And at the same time, you can get way, way better GPU for $1 versus $20 an hour for AWS or other systems. And again, this is a good solution to electricity problem because there are countries where electricity is cheaper. And when we put a price on those decentralized GPUs, there are like multiple components of it. And one is this environment cost, which is actually mostly the cost of electricity in this case. So I see a potential there. And that's so great because we don't focus on centralization of the resources. Because at some point, like Google says, sorry, companies, it's only for me right now, or Amazon or Microsoft does something like this. We don't have a full control over this. They are a business, and this might at some point be against their business to share their GPU resources, share their energy, share their data centers, and then everything goes puff. But with the decentralization, it's also built by the community of people, and the more people are in the network, the better it performs.
That's one thing I always find. I have a lot of friends who are very deep in technology, high positions, working with everywhere from like the suppliers for Apple GPUs to like, some companies that power, let's say, the traffic for half of Europe, as an example. Yeah. So it's always interesting to talk to these guys. And what I love is a lot of super technical people that they're pro decentralization, they're pro open source. What are your thoughts on that as well? Could you maybe share your insight on where that comes from? Or I just find like a lot of very technical people have their ethics in the right place, and usually if the businesses go slightly in a different direction, let's say, it's often not the technical guys, but the managerial levels or something like this. So what are your thoughts on decentralization, open source in general?
I even see it from my side. Like I have at home my small home rack. Like I have a home server and I'm living in a block of flats. So I host a few services of mine. And this is where I also support those creators of the services. I help them in the development. And when I see a bug, I just fix this. And it's also from the data perspective, like the data sits with me and I'm not sending any information to the third parties. And I really like this approach, but it's sometimes bad for business, especially right now when if you have like a product like ours where we have a lot of know-how put it into it. So while we could potentially put our code being open source, we still would need to prepare for hiding our know-hows there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to develop open source projects. The Golem network that I work with, it is an open source project, but the case is that they rise almost 1 million Ethereum 10 years, almost 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Ethereum right now and the cryptocurrency is on the hike because most probably the election results.
That's a good trade.
So yeah, they earn a lot of money on this. And they also created their own cryptocurrency for the microtransactions, because you have microtransactions for this compute resources.
Micropayments.
It's like a few cents a minute, kind of. And it's super hard to, first of all, maintain the code base for those projects. Really great job for everyone who's maintaining open source projects. It's a lot of work, and most probably you are not paid well for this.
No.
Hopefully it changes soon. And yeah, I also support whenever I can. We also self-host a few services of ours, like open source services environment. It's a little bit more overhead, because if you are not technical, it's hard to self-host services like Docker containers, Kubernetes clusters on your own.
But it is one, I guess, possible solution. Yeah, it's not fully smooth yet, but it's good to have some alternatives, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, and Connor, one thing as well I wanted to discuss with you. Last time, again, we spoke, you shared some funny stories maybe, or some things you've dealt with personally in the past. So a lot of companies nowadays, let's say the last 2-3 years, AI this, AI that, right? Everybody has the word AI in them, and they're kind of looking for big investments, and sometimes it's just a prototype. So you've gone through the experience from kind of building AI wrappers, let's say, to having to build out the whole product from scratch. Could you maybe share for other entrepreneurs, for other technical people who are going through this, they have a valid AI idea, they have an actual problem they're solving, and they're going from their first prototype to actually building the product. What's your experience there? And can you maybe share the insights from your past?
Sure. Now we're going to get a little bit more technical.
Great.
First of all, think about monetization. So I usually start with calculation if there is even break-even point for such projects. Very often, whatever you want to solve could be solved with the previous, or let's call it traditional machine learning, or even a constraint programming, like process where you have your backpack and you want to put as many as you can things to your backpack. It's like constraint programming to space evenly the items. And the same is for natural language processing. A lot of the problems could be solved with a traditional natural NLP, so natural language processing, not neuro-linguistic programming, natural language processing techniques. Like sentiment analysis. Very often people say, I want to process my comments for sentiment with ChatGPT. I'm like, this will be expensive. Way cheaper to do it in a traditional way. However, what ChatGPT changes and this technology is that suddenly you can do this. Because previously you had to have like NLP experts. Well, I was specialized with NLP for a lot of the time. I really like work with the textual data because it poses some semantics, and I also like sarcasm. And sarcasm is very well written with the memes. If someone finds me on LinkedIn, you will see I have always Friday memes.
And I guess that's your from your work with when you're in R&D, right? You work quite a bit with LLMs and NLP and stuff like that.
Correct. So I always recommend people to do the research whether this problem actually requires machine learning or large language models, and create some prototype first. Don't go heavy. Try with just simple interface if it even makes sense. And very often your system will require a database. So if you are tech person, you should know how to create like schemas for your databases. And I found a lot of the time when I was designing the schema for my prototype for the database storage, I was like, okay, but I need so much data, and some of the data is hard to get, some of the data is easy to get. So it already shows you where you have so-called rabbit holes where you could fall into and actually never get out from it, like Alice in the Wonderlands. Next thing is do it as cheap as you can. So do it ugly. I really like low code solutions for that. I wouldn't believe in no code yet. It needs still some time because AI is very specific, and sometimes it's hard to make your no code solution super specific to your domain. It's very good for broad things like I need a landing page. Yeah. There's like a finite things there for a traditional landing page, not like dynamic like we are creating. And try with low code solution. I've been using a lot of Langflow from the DataStax company. It gives us option to use Python code for the LangChain. There's also Flowwise, and there are a few others that I haven't been using very often, so hard to like recommend. But Flowwise is for JavaScript, TypeScript users. They also allow right now executing Python code. So now there are two programming languages in the AI sphere. Mostly dominated is JavaScript and Python. Python, well, is the first, but the most commonly used because of so many packages that are there for the data processing, because you have Pandas, NumPy, you have Beautiful Soup for processing HTML, and more packages there built in.
Is there anything? So I guess if I was to summarize, so number one, maybe you don't actually need AI for your idea, right? Find some existing technologies, some other way to have some kind of constraint to actually build the initial prototype. Second thing you mentioned was make sure it's actually viable in terms of business offering, like your cost versus what you can potentially charge for it. And the next thing was, I should have kept notes, but that's okay.
So there's a saying from the book, The Right It, Alberto Saviola, and he says, fail Ferrari fast. And I would say in a way that do your prototypes super cheap. Mm-hmm. And if you really want to be innovative with your product, you need to make a lot of experiments and be okay with failures. We did a few failures in Firemind. Like we did a few approaches. We've been changing the system a lot for insights of the system. And that's why you need some tools where you can prototype your ideas quickly rather than build 100,000 lines of code that you need for a simple prototype. Do some drag and drops like I've been doing with this low code solutions.
Low code, yeah.
And then once you're ready, add it to your core product. Like keep still the core base of your product. Most probably scalable, Dockerize, however you want right now.
And you also mentioned going from into production from these initial prototypes is a whole nother story compared to building on somebody else's API. So what are maybe some of the hurdles and headaches you have to deal with, or that founders should be aware they might encounter in their journey?
So first of all, it's quotas. So whenever you are doing a prototype, usually you have like 0 customers or 5 customers, 10 customers. You can do easily on low-code tools like 100, 1,000 probably custom clients. The problem happens when the clients start to access your product in parallel. And suddenly you need to scale horizontally for your services. So you need to keep in mind that you had one, for example, Docker container. Suddenly you need to have 5 for 5 users. And I've seen situations like that because most of those prototyping software isn't really well created for a multi-tenancy. So you need to scale horizontally. Sometimes it's an issue of security and role-based access control. Let's say you have multiple roles in your application, like you can be administrator, you can be a regular user, you can have read-only access. And again, a lot of those services doesn't have a proper role-based access. Some of the services even don't have like accounts per se, like you cannot share your flows, because if you drag and drop, you have like a flow, or some people say it's pipeline, and you cannot share it between different users, for example. So you need to have a service that updates it between 2 users, duplicates it between them. So this, when you go to production, there's now the problem of scale. However, you can use, if you are not in the finance industry, you can use large language models for helping you to write this code. And this poses another threat is on the juniors market for the development. Because right now, if I can solve most basic tasks that I wouldn't like to bother with LLMs, and a few LLMs, like I have a few agents that are coding, then testing the code on Azure Dynamics sessions. So they run the code, actually build it. It poses a threat to like having juniors on the market, because more and more companies will go into seniors only. And how to be a senior.
That's what I'm noticing too. Yeah, and recruitment, especially in the last year after the layoffs and everything, nowadays the market is very tough for juniors. People are looking for seniors and leads, and everything is kind of getting aggregated at the top in terms of experience. So I'm glad you actually brought that up.
Yeah, so in environment, we are actually hiring juniors, but it's mostly because we are pre-seed, so it's expensive to have seniors, and we are building a system that still requires a human in the loop at this stage. So we are giving these people this way of learning and burning our credits on AWS and Microsoft Azure, and teaching them how to actually orchestrate such systems. So we are not necessarily teaching them how to code, but we are going a step further, where we look at system design, how systems should operate, interact with pieces of the system, interact with one another, and how to orchestrate like multi-agentic systems, getting the data from.
So basically,
definitely the roles will change.
Yeah, and I have a couple questions around that, because you said you have some agents that are writing your code, some agents actually deploying and testing this code, and then you have basically the developers or the juniors kind of overseeing, understanding this process, and I guess guiding it more on a macro scale. So do you have any kind of ideas or possibilities where this might be, let's say 2 years from now or 3 years from now? Because we hear that, okay, development is going away. I don't believe in this, because still one great developer is 1,000 times, can create 1,000 times the out. Like a Satoshi Nakamoto creates a product that's, crazy, disproportionate value compared to, I guess, the number of people working on it. So where do you see this going for IT people, for developers?
It's a time for us to change. And similar change was for people in the design industry a few years ago. So whenever Photoshop came to life, and people had to adapt. We have GIMP now, Photoshop, Lightroom, like a suite of products. And now also they are changing because of generative AI and stable diffusion models for images. But now it's a time for change for our IT. Like I've mentioned, the way how developers work drastically changed. So like with the designers and the Photoshop or Figma for prototyping, or even Canva right now, you needed to learn to operate the system and focus on a little bit different skills than like just matching colors, because now the system can match colors for this approach. Like big thing for me is just images, because now I can create images that look good because the system matches the colors, and I'm super bad in matching colors. So there was always one issue for me when I was doing website development. I couldn't really match colors, so someone had to do the color matching for me, like Teams stuff. And this now poses as a threat, because if there were experts just in color matching, now they have a problem, because we will need just a limited amount of those experts to maintain those systems that does it for us. And similar things happens for programming, and we are in a good, I would say, times, because we still know how to code and we know how to operate the system. But most probably our, maybe not even children, but a few years in the future, people don't know really how to code, or like they had a brief of coding in Java or C++ from studies, which is super far from building a scalable product on 1,000 machines. And then suddenly they are jump into checking AI's code, and AI it's like a parrot. Not sure if you heard about stochastic parrot.
Tell me about that.
So one of the trading frameworks for generative or LLM-based applications is LangChain. And LangChain has a parrot in their logo, and the parrot has a meaning. Basically, some years ago, I think it's 2019 or 2021, I don't remember right now, came the term of stochastic parrots. And stochastic parrots means like, stochastic is like guessing and shooting blanks, in a way. And this is how LLMs work. So they don't really understand what they are saying, like a parrot. They are just shooting you words with a specific probability of being one after another.
The next word in queue.
Yeah, and that's why they are comparing it with a parrot. So it doesn't understand what it's saying. It's just saying some words that might make sense. And the only difference is that, parrot is a cute bird, and LLMs, well, they are just hundreds of GPUs.
So if, let's say, you still need that base level of understanding how good code looks like, or what are the do's and don'ts, you still potentially need somebody to double check the AI code, right? Do you see potential, like, I don't know, somebody like Perplexity, for example, that are known for providing accurate information with sourcing and all of that kind of stuff? Do you imagine that there's going to be designated AI companies or whatever that focus on that code analytics? So I feel like that part could probably also be automated to some extent. Again, I'm a big proponent of having that base level of skill. But yeah, do you see that as a solution, or do we still need to kind of have hard sciences and really focus on development from the ground up before we jump into that?
First of all, let's make sure that the LLMs understand even our code. As I mentioned, they are not necessarily understanding, but if they were trained of something similar to our code, like we have, for example, less trending or super new programming languages. Like, let's say we have new frameworks that were just released, and if we want to train LLMs, it takes time. It's an iterative process. There are some approaches where we do a small fine-tunings of the models, but let's look into account Next.js. Next.js is one of the leading front-end projects, a copy of React. A lot of React developers are working with Vercel, and they are releasing mostly like every year a significant changes. Now we have Next.js for 15, and I barely migrated some of the projects that I work with to Next.js 14. Not to mention, like, a lot of projects is on Next.js 12 or 13. And each of this iteration creates drastic changes. LLMs are having problem to adapt to those changes, because they look like they had 1 million lines of code in Next.js 10, 2 million lines of code in Next.js 12, and 500 lines of code in Next.js 14. So they will be prioritizing, obviously, the
bigger data set.
So you need to adapt the code base, or actually the LLM, to your code bases. There are solutions like Cursor, there are solutions like ContinueDev. I'm using ContinueDev because it's more privacy focused. And there are I know about companies building their solutions in-house. similar approaches, because Continue Dev is open source project. Good job to everyone building it. And I'm doing my also on Discord. You can find me replying to people, helping them with RAGs. So Continue Dev also uses RAG over documentations and generative AI applications, something I specialize in. They are specializing in building, VS Code plugins and stuff. So I'm trying to help them with also my knowledge of how to spin up vector stores, how to connect this, how to make most of the search through the code bases and stuff. And these solutions definitely make my life easier as a developer, because LLMs work very well with creating database schemas, with creating repository patterns, everything that we are not really eager to do. Like, it's
Tedious work.
Tedious work. Yes, you are correct. And sometimes like your database schemas are like a couple hundred lines of code too. And they are very good at that. But I see right now we are need to do more project management for this LLMs from this side. Like, I need to explain what should the code looks like, the definition of done, maybe even like test-driven development. Have you heard about that?
Of course, yeah.
Have you been able to apply it in some projects?
I mean, a lot of people I recruit, some companies are very big on test-driven development, but I'm personally not a developer. Like, I've kind of supervised projects. I cannot code.
Yeah, but same for me. Like, I've heard a lot of people to say they do test-driven development, but very little of this test-driven development in production. So actually, you do test-driven development with LLMs, because you write some tests like, hey, to make this code pass, you need to do this, this, and that. And the LLMs iterate until they pass the tests. And so this is interesting approach, how we could solve programming with LLMs. And other than that, you need to write a lot of architecture, mermaid graphs. It's interesting that LLMs actually understand understands the mermaid graphs. So instead of, for example, method of chain of thought, you can ask them for a mermaid of thought. So we have like a thinking process for the architecture, and we ask LLM to start drawing it step by step, iterate over the graph, and then after the graph is ready, start coding it. So we go to more and more details with each iterations of the code, and giving like a structure how this should be working to give some of our reasoning to the models. Like, each of us has a big baggage of experience, problems they face, and ways they like to code. And this is the way how we can squeeze it and put it to LLMs and ask them to
guide it in terms of development.
Guide them.
Konrad, I'm mindful of your time as well, and thanks for being so generous. I just have maybe one final question, and then anything else that you'd like to share. But as we briefly covered that, I know you're a big proponent of hackathons. You got community meetups in your city. You guys get, I think, pretty technical and kind of nerd out on some of the deep aspects of engineering. Is there anything else that's fascinating to you at the moment? Anything else you're keeping an eye on? What's keeping you kind of excited and motivated on the horizon, let's say?
So I'm excited about the growth of the technology and how quickly we see new and new frameworks. And this is great to see also how people are adapting to those frameworks. So those hackathons are a great way for all those people who read about AI, who go to online courses, who even watch deep learning AI courses by NG, a very, very good guy. I actually was doing his machine learning course in 2014, 2015. Okay. This was one of my most after these courses, I started my commercial career. Previously, it was university AI. Like, I was processing images from drones and stuff, and now NG gave me this more hands-on thoughts that I could start to finally grow with my next companies I was working with. And this learning opportunity is great for us, but it's also problematic. Like, everyone wanted to have 4 days work week, and suddenly we have 7 days work week. And you know something about that. Yeah?
Yes, definitely.
And it's hard for us to keep up with all the things happening around. And having groups and having communities which help us to filter out the information which is important for us, which is just marketing buzz or full fluffy words. And it helps us to be on top of the mind and then test out those different problems, solutions in hackathons, in projects, working with your friends, colleagues on implementing that.
And maybe the last question from my end, if you can also, I'll put the links in the description of the show and everywhere with your profile and with BuyerMind as well. But what's next for you personally? What's next for BuyerMind? And where do you see this kind of industry going?
So we are working right now to finish our fundraising round, pre-seed. And with that, we will hire one more expert similar to mine to build this dynamic infrastructure for landing pages, because we need to do quite a lot of engineering of the system. And I'm still doing the business side of being a CTO, not only coding and managing my team, but focusing on the technology and building this bridge between customers' content and their users, their target groups. And other than that, I want to grow as this community of Gen AI engineers. So I want to help people who maybe had problems, who started late with the technology, and save them from overpaying for online courses about that, and by people who never worked with the product management. Because product management right now is a huge part. Because it's super easy to do AI project in 6 months. It's you mostly can do right now everything in 6 months. But the problem is that in 6 months, your project most probably will be irrelevant. And because it will be an open source project right now. Someone does it for free. It's a tutorial. I've been seeing people posting on LinkedIn how great project they built. They were working on a few months for this. And I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the technology they use, and I'm saying okay, this is 100 or 500 lines of code in Python right now. You know that. And but this is our framework. Great. You've built your own framework versus framework that's supported by a few thousand people worldwide. Which one would be better? Which one would be more secure? Maybe yours, but maintaining it with the pace of speed we have in all those third-party technologies. Good luck.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing the insights. I'm happy that people like yourself are out there who are passionate about the technology, who have the ethics in the right place, who are proponents of open source and decentralization, creating cool products. I know I'm always, like I said, I'm not a technical guy, but I always play around with programmatic SEO, all of those different things. So when I hear you talk about custom dynamic landing pages, custom generated AI avatars and stuff like that, this is super exciting to me. I can see as well for you guys, aside from email, there's probably a lot of spin-off services as well that you guys can offer. So excited to see where this goes. And hopefully we catch up in the near future again and discuss again what's happening at that time.
For sure. Yeah, probably next edition of Brutes and Pretzels, at least.
Yeah,
this
definitely.
Is where our companies met. So thanks for having me here. And talk to you soon. And thanks everyone for listening.
Definitely. Much appreciated. Thanks. Hi, this is Alex for 10 more seconds before I let you go. If you enjoyed this episode, would love a positive review, or if there's any guests or any specific topics you'd like us to cover, do reach out to us or comment in this episode and we'll do our best to get those people on the show for you. Hope you have a nice rest of the day. Take care.